Okay, you know more than you ever wanted to know, probably, about hair at this point. Or maybe you love hair, I don't know. But moving right along, we're shifting from hair to glands. And we have some different kinds of glands. And maybe you're like me. I'm the kind of person that I pretty much wash my hair every day. And it's not because I'm a neatness freak. I don't want greasy hair, right? I mean, some people you'd say, yeah, I don't like my hair when it starts looking greasy, right? Why is it greasy? Greasy, oily. Why is it oily? Well, it ends up, you have glands in your skin that produce an oil that lubricates the hair and the skin. And these are called sebaceous glands. And they're usually connected to a hair follicle. So the oil comes out onto the surface of the skin through the hair follicle. You don't have them on your palms or on the bottom of your feet. You might kind of slide around if you did, but you don't. So we don't have oil. You don't have to worry about having oily feet. It's just everywhere else, and oily hands. So what does it do? It lubricates the hair and the skin. It keeps the hair from becoming brittle. It helps waterproof you, so water beads up, right? We all know that. And we had said one of the functions of skin was chemical protection. And I'd said that the chemicals that are on the surface of your skin, one, have a low pH, and in other ways, they're bactericidal, meaning they kill bacteria. And that's one of the properties of sebum. That is the oil. The name of the oil that is secreted by a sebaceous gland is sebum. Yeah, that's it. So sebum, that's why you produce it. Now, when you have problems with acne or blackheads or all of that, those kinds of things, these are the glands that are responsible for it. Now, I've actually had a couple of these in my life. So if you look, slide 8, you see a horrible looking place on this person's back. I've had 2 of them on my back, the exact same thing. And this is what they call a sebaceous cyst. I had one not too long ago, and when I was sort of re-evaluating my understanding of these things, I saw where they now call them skin cyst. But what it is it's a sebaceous gland that gets plugged up. And if you look at this picture on this person's back, it becomes pretty big. So if you think about it, we have 650 of these normal ones per square inch. Well, that's more than a square inch, and that's one, right? So it's like a balloon, blown up like a balloon. And there's several ways of dealing with it. They can try and make them come to a head and drain, or they can surgically remove them. And I've done it both ways, quite honestly. I have to tell you my story. You know me and my stories. I was years ago, it's like 25 years ago. I had one of these on my back and it got infected, and they gave me this horrible antibiotic to take to get rid of the infection, and then I had to go have it surgically removed. And I'd never had this kind of surgery before, but I thought, it's no big deal. I'll just drive myself. I go to the dentist by myself, right? And so I drove myself, and it probably wasn't a good idea, but they didn't put me under. They just gave me local anesthesia, and they pulled this thing out. And the guy, he was late arriving after lunch, and it's gross, but I remember he was burping, the surgeon, when he was doing this. Well, to make a long story short, I think he'd had a 3-martini lunch, because he took this giant thing out and he didn't even turn it in for pathology or anything. But anyway, so I went through the surgery and I was driving back to work. And I thought, well, I'm on sick leave. I'm not really sick. I just had something cut off my back. I'll go to the mall. you know. And so I went to the mall, and of course, in the middle of the day, there aren't that many people around, and so no one spoke to me or anything, and I didn't think anything of it. I went back out to my car, and I said, oh, well, go back to work. Nothing much happening there, and I was like, why am I sweating? It wasn't sweat. My entire back was covered in blood. And I'd been walking around the mall. So I actually drove on back to work, and I said, guys, look at this, make sure I'm not gonna die. And it had stopped bleeding, but it hadn't been closed properly. Remember, I said my surgeon maybe wasn't in very good shape. He hadn't closed it properly. And so for years and years, I had a round scar on my back that looked like I had taken a bullet. It was just a cyst that had been removed. But anyway, I always think of that when I see this photograph here. So, okay. Sorry about that digression. Sudoriferous glands. Okay, so we said these are, the name makes you think of odor, sudoriferous. And what produces odor? Yeah, sweat. So we have two different kinds of sweat glands, these sudoriferous glands. Now, one of them is the equine sweat gland. And so if you go to the gym, and you work out and you get really sweaty, and you go, it doesn't stink. You're wet, but it doesn't stink. But it helps to cool you off, right? And so this is a type, there are two kinds of sudoriferous glands. This is one of those whose job it is to cool you, that, temperature homeostasis. But there's not much odor to it. Now, if you don't take a bath after you've been at the gym, the bacteria and other stuff that is on your skin, you'll start to stink, of course. But while you are sweating, it doesn't really smell that bad. So we have these equine sweat glands that are going to be responsible for temperature homeostasis. And so the secretions are mostly water and ions, ascorbic acid, that's vitamin C, and it's gonna, and there's small amounts of urea and uric acid, PP, but not a lot, so you don't really, it doesn't smell like urine. So these are most numerous on the palms of your hands and soles of your feet. You ever been in a situation where you're nervous and you have nervous sweat and your hands are kind of sweaty? Well, your feet do the same thing. That's these equine sweat glands. And I had another story. I'm not going to go too long on it, but I have had a professor once in a summer class. He wasn't used to being a professor. He was more a researcher. And the very first class that we met, he was so nervous, he was drenched in sweat. So equine sweat glands you can respond emotionally through them with emotional sweat. And yes, there is a hereditary component to it. So there are some people who are just more sweaty than others. Okay, so that's sebaceous gland and one of the sudoriferous glands, the equine. I'm gonna stop right here. We'll come back and we'll talk about the other kind of sudoriferous gland.